Racked up $20,000 on my company card, hiding it from my boss, living in fear of discovery, job loss, and potential criminal charges. I racked up $20,000 in personal charges on my company credit card. The short version of the story is that I genuinely misunderstood the way my corporate credit card was to be used. I have been using it over the last few years regularly for personal reasons, including medical, car payments, a car is required for my job, but not covered under expenses, and general, personal shopping. My girlfriend did not have income for 2 years, and I used the card to cover expenses beyond my paycheck. I can use PayPal to get cash out of the card and into my bank account, so what I have been doing is waiting until the bill is due, a new billing cycle, and taking out that amount with PayPal, then using the cash to pay it off, plus adding in my own money to try and reduce the balance a little. This just means I get charged PayPal fees for the cash advance, and it means nothing more is due until the next billing cycle. This results in the next month having that balance plus charges, minus any and all money I can put toward it out of my pay, generally $2,000 a month. Somehow I have managed to rack up a rolling balance of $20,000 on this card and I can't ever pay it all off in one go. I had a bankruptcy a few years ago and cannot qualify for a loan to cover the full amount. I am scared to bring it up with my manager because it might mean I will lose my job once they realize what's been happening, and if I lose my job I will no longer be able to contribute the $2,000 each month toward paying the balance off. Some people even have suggested I might be up for serious legal problems, and I just feel so stressed out every single day about the situation. My manager said point blank that if I did not get a car within the week, there was nothing he could do for me. He stated clearly and explicitly that the company card could not be used for personal expenses, but he also mentioned that it would not be checked up on if it got paid in full each month. So, with that information I made the decision to go forward. I truly thought that all would be okay as long as I did whatever it takes to pay the balance in full each month, and it seems to have held true so far. But at the same time, I am aware that the company policy states no personal expenses. The original plan was to use the money for a deposit on a car, and once the car was paid off, I would then have the car as an asset, which I could use as security on a loan, which I could use to pay off the card. All was going to plan, but the car got written off due to the engine totally breaking down after a month, so I then had to get another deposit on a second car. That was also okay until one day while at a red light a semi-truck smashed it up, and that second car was nearly paid off, but then it got written off as well. Luckily, for the second car I did have insurance, but the insurance company only agreed to pay out the remaining balance on that car loan and so I was again carless. Third car deposit, and 4 years later I am feeling trapped in this cycle where I'm getting about $600 in PayPal fees every month. I am starting to get unwell from the constant stress and thought that HR might see it as theft and I could be sent to jail, lose my job, and lose my reputation and ability to get another job. Basically, I am terrified that I have ruined my life completely through an act which was made at a time of high stress and was short-sighted, but done with the intention of saving my job. I don't know if it is relevant, but I have so impulse control, particularly when under stress, has always been an issue for me, and the whole thing was really traumatic with changing roles and several other factors. My mental state was definitely not clear at the time I started doing this. Update 1. I went to my manager and just laid it on the table, cut out any mention of factors as to how I got here, just laid it out. I have $20,000 personal expenses on the company card and I can't immediately pay it back. He had to go to his boss, and she had a teleconference with me, along with HR. Along with the meeting invite, they attached the company credit card policy, along with the ethics policy. The first question they asked was, "Do you understand how a company card is supposed to be used?" I said that I have read the documents they gave me, and from reading them and talking to my manager it is very clear that the way I've been using the card up until now is inappropriate. The next thing they asked was, "Just to be clear, you have $20,000 of personal expenses and you can't pay the entire amount in one lump sum. Is that what you are saying?" Then they asked, "How will you pay it back?" I said that I am happy if I pay only my rent and food, and they can basically take the rest of my pay until it is covered. My manager's boss said she is not happy with that, because it will put me under stress which might lead me to some other act of desperation or make my job performance suffer. She further stated that because it is such a large amount, they do not have the budget to pay it in order for me to repay the company slowly. She went on to explain that the American Express corporate card is not a true credit card, but a debit card, and therefore the company must clear the bill each month or face fines, penalties, and a breach of the agreement that our company has with American Express. She asked if I have fully explored loans, friends, family, and all other options. I said that I had, and I could provide rejected loan applications to show the effort I have been going through to get this debt into my name. She said that they need to go back to the finance team to figure out the next steps, and she stated she would schedule a meeting for Thursday of this past week. I haven't heard back from her regarding this, and I assume she is still waiting to hear back from the finance team and attempting to come up with a fix for this situation. She says that the issue of the misuse of the company card is a secondary issue and the first is how to pay the bill. My manager rang me just after this meeting finished. He was full of support and offered to write up the cost of losing me. He said he would like to show his boss that it would cost 4 times the $20,000 for him to outsource coverage and hire a new person, not to mention the interruption the client would experience. He said I need to put together a budget showing my income and expenses, and he suggested I do $100 per week personal spending in the budget, so they will see the game plan I come up with as sustainable. He informed me of a few company policies, where employees can cash out a week of holiday pay each year with approval, and he said he is happy to approve that. Also, he will find out if I can cash out retirement funds to help with this, and he is offering as much overtime as possible. He suggested if I seek an out-of-hours job to supplement this and that it be restricted to weekends only because otherwise I'll get burned out and might not stick to the plan. He suggested I compose an email full of action words, like I can commit to X dollars per paycheck rather than I'll try to repay ASAP. He even kindly offered to proofread my email and look it over before sending on to HR and upper management. He mentioned that the likelihood of legal proceedings is low due to it being easier for them to get money from me if I am still working, and at least in New Zealand, it's bad for the company reputation to take the hard road with their employees. While he says he cannot predict the outcome, he will support every effort to retain me. He suggested as a start to just offer to relinquish the credit card and offer to expense legitimate things through my bank account going forward. I put together a quick budget, reflecting that with no more spending on the card and no more of the monthly PayPal fees, I can get this paid off within 12 months, through payroll reductions alone, and I have stated that I'm still exploring any possibilities of loans, as well as seeking overtime and the possibility of some weekend work to reduce the time frame for total payback. I am shocked they didn't fire me on the spot, relieved that it seems legal action is low on the list of likely outcomes, and totally amazed at their level of understanding and willingness to help me. It's like this huge, scary, heavy, unknown thing that has been causing depression and taking my mind very dark places over the last 4 years is now lifted and I see a light. At the very least, it's not going to grow any bigger. PayPal fees are out of the equation, so any contribution I make is going 100% towards the outstanding amount. You know, my friend, I think I'm standing 2 inches taller. Just waiting for this second meeting is a bit of limbo, but it's far better than this terror I have put myself in over this. It's just good that it is in the light now. I'll let you know what happens after this meeting, which I haven't even got an invite for just yet. Update 2. Hi all, just thought I'd give you an update a year later. I have repaid Amex in full, and with a habit of saving firmly established, I have a little bit of a safety net in place so things will not likely get that bad ever again. I got a promotion in my job later on in the year and that came with a pay raise, so I was actually able to get it taken care of in 9 months instead of 12. Life's all good and I am very thankful for all the opinions here. Some of the info was very valuable in my approach. Things could have taken a very different path. Update 3. I am, now, after the promotion, on $60,000. Previously it was $55,000 per year, so while not easy with 2 kids, rent, and car payments, I was so relieved not to be jobless. I just made it work, and I discovered that beans are marvelous. As a side effect of this, I must tell you guys, I learned to cook at home a lot. This was such an amazing journey, not only cheaper and healthier, but damn tasty. In terms of stress management, I was seriously in trouble this time 2 years ago. I turned to exercise as a stress management relief source, and I have dropped 20 kilograms, with only changing diet and starting a running routine each week. I know I messed up bad, but to be honest I am a better, less depressed, more active, more thoughtful, and happier person now. Looking back, it was a serious kick in the butt and I made use of it to get on a better life path. I am so glad to hear everybody cheering me on along the path. This website, and the community here, were literally my backbone during a turning point. The advice I took away and what I did with it has truly made me a better human. Update 4. I thought I was done talking about this, honestly. Debt repaid, card handed back, beans and jogging and a boring adult budget, and credits, right? Then this year happened and it has been one long plot twist with fewer tears and more paperwork. The first curveball dropped on a Tuesday morning, subject line APAC card program review, and my stomach did an instant swan dive even though I'm clean now. CFO, HR, compliance, and a calendar invite that looked like it could eat me. I walked in thinking this was the other shoe finally falling. It wasn't. Amex changed platforms and the company decided to do a top-to-bottom cleanup and training rollout, and then compliance turned to me and asked if I would help them design the training because I had already lived through the worst-case scenario and survived it. The CFO said, very matter-of-factly, that they would rather build a system that stops people from falling than catch them at the bottom, and they wanted someone who knew where the holes were. I said yes before I could overthink it. 2 weeks later I'm in a small room with a camera, an HR person who is weirdly good with a lint roller, and a guy from the learning team, talking into a lens about the dumb ways you can rationalize an expense when you're stressed and how policies don't mean anything if you don't have the guardrails and the habit. They blurred my face and changed my voice a little, but anyone in our office who knows my shoes and way too long sentences would probably clock me. Whatever. If one person sits in that induction watching and doesn't do what I did, I'll wear the goofy voice modulator for life. While that's happening, finance flips the switch on our new setup. Cash advances disabled company-wide. Real-time alerts that ping your phone the second you tap your card and ask for the receipt before you've even left the counter. Category blocks that just refuse to go through if it smells personal. They had me on the pilot and told me to deliberately try to game it. It felt ridiculous trying to buy a bag of groceries with the corporate card just to see what happened, But when it gave a big, fat declined and then pinged a compliance warning to the test inbox, I weirdly felt relieved. The structure I wish I had back then exists now. Even better, you can flag I paid for this personally, please reimburse in the app, and it pushes a little approval to your manager, and it all just auto maps to GL codes without finance having to chase copies of receipts with one corner torn off. Watching it run was like seeing the grown-up version of a system. No loopholes, no PayPal cash out, nonsense. I think it's going to save someone's job one day. Then the IRD letter landed at home. If you ever want to feel 12 years old again, open a letter from the tax department with your name on it and 3 paragraphs about historical fringe benefit reporting. I rang the CFO like a shot and he had already seen it. We came up on a list because of the review, and they were working through the years where I had the personal charges. The company handled the bulk because it falls under their filing, but there was a component that needed to be charged back to me to keep it clean, something to do with a gross-up difference over 2 tax years and the fact that we'd originally classified part of it as an advance. I signed a deed, agreed to a payroll deduction, and that was that. It stung, but the sting was the tiniest be compared to the swarm from before. Past me would have spiraled, current me shaved a bit off the fun line in the budget for 3 months and carried on. Work itself decided to go full new season, new cast. My manager took a rollover in Melbourne and I got thrown into the acting seat for 12 weeks. I didn't ask for it, but I didn't run either. Suddenly I was the one approving expenses and reading explanations like client lunch where the client didn't seem to have been invited. It was a weird mirror to look into. One of our juniors flagged on the system because his Uber rides had a habit of starting outside his apartment on Saturday mornings. Old me would have avoided it, but I took him for a coffee, told him my story start to finish, and asked him flat out what was going on before compliance did. He didn't try to spin me, he was embarrassed and thought because he had worked late Friday he could fudge the Saturday ride into Monday's trip. We put a plan in place, he paid it back out of his next pay and set the app to personal by default on weekends. No HR write-ups, no drama. He sent me a photo of his calendar later with a reminder that says switch Uber to work. I kept a copy because it felt like proof that telling the truth is sometimes the most practical process improvement you can make. Also, in the middle of this, life did its usual thing where it keeps happening regardless of your inbox. The cheap little Corolla I've been nursing like a houseplant vanished one night. Gone from the curb, glass on the ground, that particular hollow feeling in your rib cage. 2 weeks later the police found it 3 suburbs over, steering column ripped, stereo gone, the back seat looked like someone had tried to move a chicken coop in it. The engine still turned over. I used the emergency fund for the excess and a new steering lock and paid a local guy to scrub it so it didn't smell like wet hay. I did not touch any card that wasn't in my name. I caught myself watching my own hands when I opened my bank app. 3 years ago I would have panicked and looked for the fastest fix and buried myself deeper. This time, the money was there because I had put it there on purpose ages ago and had just left it alone. I drove away from the panel beaters in a car that rattled a bit more, but my brain wasn't rattling. I cannot overstate how luxurious that felt. At home, the kids got older and hungrier and my bean obsession has morphed into actual meals people request rather than tolerate. We bought a $6 slow cooker from a garage sale and I swear it's the best thing I've ever owned that plugs in. I chop onions on a Sunday night and it does the rest. My partner landed a job last winter, part-time at first, then they liked her and gave her a proper contract, and we finally stopped holding our breath at the end of each month. We got engaged with a ring we can actually afford. It's simple and it fits and it didn't come with a payment plan. We're doing the registry office, immediate family and a picnic if the weather holds, and I think it's going to be perfect in the most un-Instagram way possible. There was a moment in all this where my body reminded me that it remembers. I had my first true the walls are pulsing panic in a long time the night before the video shoot. I haven't done meds for my ad in years because I white-knuckled through on structure alone, but I booked myself in, got reassessed properly, and started a very low dose. It felt like putting my brain on tracks again. Not a personality change, not a magic trick, just enough friction between a thought and an action that I get to make a choice. I kept the running and I still cook, and between all 3 I'm not running on fumes. I ran the Auckland half and finished in a tide of people I will never see again. And at the last kilometer I realized I was crying because the finish line looked exactly like a dull Tuesday last year when I paid the last cent to Amex and it clicked that sometimes life is a series of stupid long jogs where you just don't stop. It sounds cheesy reading it back, but it's what I felt. Then the acting stint turned into a real conversation. We went through a proper process, interview panel, a case study, me presenting a plan for how to stop expense leakage without turning the whole place into a police state, and they offered me the team lead role. It came with more money, still not yacht money, but more than that, it came with trust. My contract now has my name on a budget line and a team who send me memes at 1 a.m. on Mondays and ask me if salmon counts as a legitimate client lunch if the client is a vegetarian. I told them I'm not losing my job over salmon, so let's keep it simple. Side quest, finance misapplied one of my old payroll deductions from the FBT cleanup and for 2 days Amex showed a ghastly little $27.50 overdue on a closed account. The finance guy emailed me a screenshot with 12 apologies and I laughed out loud because there was a time when that number would have felt like a bullet. We fixed it in the afternoon and that was that, but I took a photo of the screen anyway. It's saved in my phone in a folder I cheekily called proof that things pass. There's one more thing, and it feels like the universe doing a neat little loop. Compliance asked if I would consider moving across to them full-time next year. They want to build a little internal early warning function that sits between HR and finance and catches stuff before it escalates. A prevention team, basically. It would mean less client-facing stuff, more process, more people who are either embarrassed or angry in my office, and a lot of conversations that start with, "Look, I'm not here to tell you off." I haven't said yes yet. I like my team and the day-to-day, and I'm only just getting used to not waking up with the heavy rock sitting on my chest. But the idea that I could get paid to be the person I desperately needed to meet 3 years ago is doing a number on me. So that's the new chapter. No drama, confetti exploding everywhere, just a steady stream of grown-up decisions and the occasional weird day where I'm recording voiceover for a training module about not buying groceries on a corporate card. If you told the guy hiding a $600 PayPal fee in a bank statement that one day he'd be the one approving somebody else's expense and then going home to slow cook beans before a 10 kilometers run, he would have laughed in your face. I didn't predict any of this, but I can tell you the air is better up here. I'm not scared of the mail anymore. I know where my wallet is. And when the calendar invite pops up with 3 executives' names on it, I still swallow hard, but I don't disappear. I sit down, I breathe, and I tell the truth. It keeps working. Update 5. I ended up saying yes, but in a way that didn't feel like a trapdoor. We wrote it as a 6-month secondment into compliance to build the early warning thing I kept talking about, with a clean exit clause in case I hated it. I still sit with my team on Mondays and approve their salmon jokes, and then I wander 2 floors up and try to design a net wide enough to catch the things that used to keep me up at 3 a.m. It sounds lofty written out like that. In practice it was me in a meeting room with a whiteboard and a filthy eraser, drawing boxes and arrows and writing. This is where people panic in the margins. We kicked it off with something we called Spring Clean Week because amnesty makes everyone think they've done a crime. We basically told the whole company, if you think you might have miscoded something, or you've been meaning to swap a taxi from business to personal but you keep forgetting, this is the week to fix it, no questions asked, no notes in your file. I braced for silence and instead the inbox exploded. 90% of it was tiny, human stuff. Someone found a coffee they put through on a Saturday by mistake. Someone else had been reimbursed for Wi-Fi twice because the hotel printed the charge on both folios. A guy in Wellington had somehow attached a photo of his cat to 6 expense claims in a row and didn't notice because he always drags and drops from the same folder. I wrote back, please tell me your cat's name. We need to know for audit purposes because I am, apparently, a dad now. The other 10% was the reason we're doing any of this. A senior rep put through a $1,800 dinner with a wine list that read like it had its own PR team. Guest count 2 and the client's name was TBD. He is one of those people whose footsteps you can hear on the carpet and your body adjusts itself before your brain does because numbers fall out of his pockets when he walks. Old me would have found a way to pretend I hadn't seen it until it became someone else's problem. New me opened the policy, highlighted the bit about entertainment limits and actual client presence, and sent a plain message asking for the attendee list and business purpose. He replied with call me, and then called me before I could reply, and for 3 minutes I listened to a very fast monologue about how relationships are built over dessert, and how the CEO in Sydney doesn't want to see compliance killing deals. There is a particular adrenaline that rushes in when someone important decides you are in their way. I took a breath and said that I'm not a wall, I'm a speed bump, and speed bumps only hurt when you try to take them at 80. Then I offered him an exact way to split it, remove the bottles over the per head cap, list the client, pick up the overage personally and send me the amended receipt. He swore under his breath, did the math, and sent it back like I asked. 40 minutes later the CFO emailed me right call. Keep going. I screenshotted it and didn't even save it in the silly things past folder because I felt it in my bones this time. The company asked me to present what we're building at a regional offsite in Sydney. The irony was loud enough to be funny. They reissued me a corporate card for the trip. I held it in my hand and it felt like finding an old cigarette in a jacket pocket years after you quit. I told them I would take it, but I wanted the spending limit set low, the cash advance function dead, and the alerts turned up to shout. The learning team laughed and put my name on the pilot again. At the airport I paid for my long black with my own card, but when I tapped the work one at the hotel the app pinged and asked me to take a photo of the folio like it was scolding me on behalf of the future. I walked past the minibar in my room like it was a riptide and bought water and a pack of gum downstairs because the walk felt like good insurance. The talk itself was pure me with a flip chart and too many hand gestures, but the room listened, and after, a guy from Singapore took me aside and said his team had 3 people on performance plans last year over card stuff and he's going to try Spring Clean Week. I flew home proud and weirdly calm, with all my receipts zipped in a pouch like an overgrown school project. 2 days later I did the exact thing the system is designed to catch. The groceries were chaos, kids used trolleys like bumper cars, and I reached into my wallet without looking, tapped at countdown, and the phone buzzed with a big red declined, blocked merchant category. The rush of shame was almost comical in its muscle memory. I laughed at the checkout, pulled out my own card, paid, and sat in the car for a second with my thumb and forefinger on my eyes because it felt like getting blasted with a very cold hose. I emailed our compliance inbox from the car park, wrote, I used the wrong card at countdown, it was blocked, I paid personally, logging it here because I want the record to show the system works, including on me. The team sent back 3 thumbs up and a bad pun, and I drove home with bananas and humility. We got married. We did exactly what we said we would do and went to the registry office wearing the clothes we already owned, and my partner's mom brought a lemon cake on the bus in a cake carrier with a crack in one corner. The celebrant had a biro with a plastic flower taped on that he kept losing under papers like a magic act. We signed, and the kids each read something. My daughter wrote a poem about beans because apparently that is my legacy now, and my son, who is not built for public performance, whispered "You're my favorite grown-ups" into the microphone like a funeral and made everyone cry. The plan was a picnic, but Auckland did its thing and threw sideways rain at us, so we decamped to my sister's community hall, spread tablecloths on trestles, and ate sausage rolls and potato salad while an uncle I barely know played the same 3 chords on a guitar for 2 hours. It was perfect, 100 tiny imperfections holding hands. On the money front we did the most boring, most satisfying grown-up thing and moved our KiwiSaver to a balanced fund after a proper chat with someone who wasn't trying to sell us anything. For the first time since math class we wrote our net worth down on paper and it wasn't negative. The number is not impressive to anyone but us. I sat with the piece of paper for a good minute, then put it in a drawer and went for a run because I didn't know what else to do with that feeling except move. Speaking of running, I learned I can't be a hero all the time because my left ankle decided it had had enough of me pretending I'm 22. I rolled it on a route in Cornwall Park and spent 3 weeks being a person who swims laps badly and says things like the pool is actually very meditative if you can get over the goggle smell. I came back slow and my watch sulked at me, but I'm back in trainers and I signed us up for Round the Bays mostly because the kids wanted the free t-shirt. They ran the last bit with me, sticky with sunblock and shouting at each other about who gets to press stop on my watch at the finish. Work did the other kind of exercise, the one where you use your backbone. The early warning system started flagging something squinty with a vendor whose logo appears on a lot of our marketing invoices. Same amounts, 2 months apart, same description, same attachment with a new date typed at the top. The tool we built isn't AI, it's a bunch of stubborn if/then rules in a spreadsheet with too many conditional formats. But it lit up and I poked at it and then I went and asked who knows the person who runs this vendor. The answer came back as a name that sits in bigger rooms than I do. There is a very human urge to look away when politics show up in a spreadsheet. I wrote what I saw in plain words and asked for an explanation. It turns out the vendor had a new accounts person who thought each campaign had to be billed monthly regardless of activity and had recycled the same creative. It could have been honest incompetence, it could have been a bit of wishful thinking. Either way we got a credit note for the duplicates and a new statement of work with actual dates and deliverables. I documented the conversation like a grown-up and sent it to finance. I braced for the phone call that starts with "Do you know whose vendor that is?" and instead got one that started with "Thank you for not letting this be awkward. I do not think I am brave, I think I am tired of the alternative." There was a weirder one too. Someone mailed an anonymous envelope to my desk with 4 receipts and a post-it in tidy handwriting that said "Please talk to her before this goes somewhere bad." The her turned out to be a manager 2 desks over who was reversing 2 online clothing returns to the card instead of her personal bank, just temporarily while the refund cleared and then forgetting to fix it. If you want to see a person go from defensive to relieved in under a minute, show them how quickly something small can become a big thing when you bury it. We sat with the receipts and her hands were shaking, and rather than lecture I opened my own things pass folder and showed her the screenshot of the $27.50 past due on a closed account and said that our worst acts are usually just a bunch of tiny sprints in the wrong direction. She paid it back. We set her card app to default to submit for review for a month so she had a speed bump when she needed it, and she brought me a coffee the next morning the color of wet concrete with a smiley face drawn in the foam. People are so very human. It is a relief to build systems that assume that and protect them anyway. One small life admin note that would have devastated me a year ago. IRD sent another letter, this one about the historic gross-up. They had undercounted the employer contribution on a certain period because of a rate change nobody told anyone about. It was $86 and change. The back of my neck did the old prickle when I saw the government letterhead and then nothing happened. I added a line to the budget, it disappeared into payroll, and I went back to chopping onions for the slow cooker like an ad for a life insurance company. We finally retired the Corolla that looks like it's seen things and bought a used wagon from a guy in a high-vis who shook my hand like a country song. It has a tow bar and an inexplicable glitter embedded in the dash, and I paid for it with money that existed before the car did. I watched the bank balance drop and didn't break into a sweat. I bought a $38 steering lock out of habit. I also changed the wiper blades in our driveway with YouTube and got grease on a tea towel that will now never be the same. The kids named the car. They chose Steve and will accept no notes. The video I recorded with the voice filter migrated further than we planned. Someone in the Melbourne office told me the new grads there try to figure out who Muppet Voice Man is by the shoes in the B-roll. A cluster of them came over for training and one of them, bold in the way only people who have never had to pay for their own printer paper can be, asked if it was me. I said yes, and he looked at me for a very long second and said, "You don't seem stupid." It was the kindest insult I've ever received. On the medication front, I went back for a follow-up and we nudged the dose a hair. It does not make me a better person. It makes me a person who puts a pause between a bad thought and a stupid action, which is apparently 90% of adult life. I booked a few sessions with a counselor too and we made a plan that lives in simple sentences. When I am tired, I do less. When I am stressed, I tell someone. When I am tempted, I write the thing down and look at it in daylight. It sounds kindergarten and it works. At the very end of the secondment, compliance asked to make it permanent. They put numbers on a paper and a job title on a box, and I took the paper home and we sat on the couch and read it out loud, and then we didn't decide. I went into the office the next day and found a folded note on my keyboard that just said, "Thanks for holding the line," in the CFO's tiny neat handwriting with a little chocolate fish taped to it like a school prize. It felt not like a sign, but like permission. I took the job. I negotiated to keep Wednesday's lunch with my old team because they are my people and because their memes are a language my brain likes. I signed the contract with my scratchy, boring signature and then went downstairs and booked a meeting room and drew more boxes and wrote next to one of them, "Stop people falling, not catching," at the bottom. I know this update reads like a stream of competency porn and I am allergic to that, so let me confess that I also set my wedding ring down on the bathroom sink at the public pool and walked away and remembered 5 minutes later in the car park with my stomach doing cartwheels. It was still there under the tap, glinting at me like a judge. I put it back on and said out loud in an empty bathroom, "We are not doing this again," and it made me laugh because I sounded like a parent talking to a child that lives in my head. I don't have a dramatic ending because there hasn't been one. There have been 100 small non-events that used to be disasters and now are just items on a calendar or the walk to school. I caught a phishing email that pretended to be from a vendor because the logo was an old version and I got to enjoy the tiny quiet smugness of sending it to IT with the subject "nice try." The junior who had the Uber thing got certified in our expense system and now catches my typos and tells me off when I write a sentence that runs like a marathon. The offsite in Sydney gave me a plug adapter I didn't return on time and I marched into the office like a child with a stolen sweet and said, "Charge me the replacement, please." The finance guy waved it off and said, "You returning it is the win." If you're fishing for a metaphor to pin this all on, I don't have one fresh. What I keep finding instead are these solid little objects in my life that I didn't have before. A steering lock that clicks into place, a second-hand slow cooker that just does what it's meant to do all day while I'm at work, a card in my wallet that isn't scary anymore because it belongs to the company and not to my chaos, a ring I am learning to keep an eye on, a note on a desk that says "thank you" like it's a normal part of the job. The last time a calendar invite popped up with 3 executives' names, I took my time and brought a coffee in, and when I sat down, I didn't fill the room with words. I answered their questions. I asked some back. We decided something sensible and I walked out into the absolute blandness of a hallway carpet and felt like I had just threaded a needle on a rocking boat. The thrill, I am discovering, is not in the cliff edge, it's in the quiet land on the other side where you can hear yourself think.